Hello, everyone, and welcome to a new edition of our Open Innovation Thursdays. Every week, we discuss for 15 minutes interesting topics about open innovation as defined in the Oxford Handbook of Open Innovation. My name is Marisol Menendez. I'm CEO and founder of Pilacatu, a company dedicated to open innovation and ecosystem orchestration, but I've been dedicating for almost 20 years now to open innovation, for example, formerly in BBVA as the head of open innovation, global head of open innovation, and many other ecosystems around the world. That's why it's a pleasure and a pride and really interesting time for me to have this opportunity to speak with such interesting people such as Jim Spohrer. Welcome, Jim. How are you today?
Hey, Marisol, I'm very good. Nice to say hello to everybody from California, Silicon Valley.
Thank you very much for connecting from California. I'm connecting from Bilbao today. This is also very interesting because we've been connecting from all over the world. And this is the global knowledge of open innovation gathered in this book. And well, this is one of the evidences connecting from all over the world. Jim, we always like to get to learn a little bit about our guests. So can you please introduce yourself and maybe tell us a little bit about your career and professional background?
Sure. Yeah, hi everyone. I'm Jim Spohrer. I collaborated with Param Singh of Salesforce on a chapter for the Open Innovation book called Open Innovation and Open Source Software Tooling. And in that chapter, we explored the need for open innovation around metadata in the cloud. And Param is very accomplished in Salesforce. And my background is that I got a degree, physics degree from MIT in the 1970s. Then I went to work for a startup AI company in the Boston area. And we did mathematical modeling of speech and language in the late 1970s. Yes, we considered generative AI. We had, we were doing mathematical modeling of speech for speech recognition. We had a special computer, slow by today's standards, but it was 8 million instructions per second, 32-bit back then. So a screaming fast computer back then to do all this mathematical modeling. But then I got my PhD at Yale in artificial intelligence. Lived a year in Rome, Italy, where I mentored students, PhD students, and then went to work for Apple for 10 years, working on AI in education. And we did some open innovation there, open sourcing certain tools. And then I went to IBM, where I worked as an executive for almost 25 years. At the IBM Almaden Research Center, had various roles, CTO of the venture capital group. So long career, but I am almost 70 years old, so I retired a few years ago, and now I'm retired, and I spend one day a week. Wednesdays, the day we're doing this, is my volunteer day. So I help nonprofits and basically anybody that asks for favors that I can help them. Wednesday's my day to help people with favors. So I hope that helps a little bit, Marisol.
Oh, wow. And Wednesday is the day for good conversations. And I always say my favorite part of this podcast is to learn about these personal careers we discovered through gems. And it's amazing to have this insight. I think that we could have another independent podcast just to tell the stories about your career. Very interesting, Jim. Thank you very much for connecting and for sharing this chapter, as you were saying, is chapter 46. This is already chapter 46 of the book. It's in the section Open Innovation in Practice, which is part 8 of the book. I wrote chapter 50, so I'm very happy that we are in the practice block of the book. And of course, this is a super relevant today chapter. It's called Cloud Metadata and Interoperability, Open Innovation and Open Source Software Tooling. We've been talking also with Linux Foundation because we have 2 chapters talking about open software. But here, this aspect, talking about open innovation, open source software tooling, maybe open data as well, is very interesting. And as you said, you co-wrote this chapter together with Param Singh. Um, so we have all the right ingredients to have a very interesting chapter. Um, do you have any, can you share with us any anecdotes or stories? How come did you ended up writing this chapter for the book and being this chapter here?
Yeah, Param Singh at Salesforce uh, is an old colleague, an old friend. We actually would meet frequently at Berkeley for Henry Chesbrough's Open Innovation events and the Business Innovation Forum. So we had known about each other and had fantastic conversations at those Open Innovation events. But then one day, um, contacted me and said, "Hey, do you think we could start collaborating about an open source metadata project for the LinkedIn Foundation?" And at the time, I was the Technical Advisory Council chair for the Linux Foundation AI and Data. And I said, "What a great topic! What a great project! I'm all in." And we, tried to build some community around this. And Salesforce had some really cool software. IBM had some really cool software. Both organizations were saying, yeah, maybe it's time to, try to put them together, merge them, and make a bigger open source community around this important topic. And the topic was really about, you know, every company has data and you have data about the data. That's called metadata. And so the idea is we could foster more collaboration and build bigger and faster ecosystems if we had an open metadata project. So that's what the chapter is about. And we talk about the challenges. It's really hard. I guess one of the biggest challenges, well, there's a lot of challenges. I'll just leave it at that. But that was how we got together and wrote the chapter, and it was basically a project in the Linux Foundation as well.
This, as I said, has all the great ingredients and also the great questions, because in practice, besides talking about the implementation of open innovation, of course, technology has a prominent role. And all these elements that you were discussing, so relevant topic today, not only for practitioners, but also for academics. So what's this chapter about? What is maybe the headline or summary?
Well, I think the headline summary again is that uh, if there is uh, a cloud-based metadata for all organizations representing the data in all organizations, that will facilitate collaboration. Now, we wrote this chapter before, all the large language models and the generative AI. So um, nowadays, with those tools, one can actually begin to do some of these projects. But it's kind of interesting because, for example, now we can start building metadata projects around people. And for example, I have a digital twin of myself, that can like give talks about my papers, and my digital twin is in some ways better than me because my digital twin doesn't have to sleep. My digital twin can give the talk in Japanese or Chinese, languages I don't speak. But now imagine not just having a digital twin of an individual person, but a digital twin of a whole company like IBM or Salesforce. And when you get these digital twins of the companies, um, just like you can have interactions with a digital twin of me, you could have a digital twin interaction with the whole company, or even like a whole city or a state or a nation. Any entity that gives and gets service, you can start thinking about having a digital twin of that can give and get those service capabilities as the marginal cost of computing goes to zero. So I would say, um, you know, little did Param and I know, but we were creating a chapter that was like perfect for the explosion, the generative AI explosion that happened. It was just like, perfectly positioned for that explosion that happened. And that's why I think people should go back and read the chapter and think, oh my gosh, this lays the foundation for a lot of the discussions that are happening right now around large language models, generative AI, and models of these what we call well, I call them service systems.
Yeah, because we wrote the chapters around 2023, I think, and it was published in 2024. And these 2 years, 2.5 years, have been like the fastest escalation of all these technologies, no? So
Yes.
what were the conclusions or the main learnings of this chapter back then when you published it? And later we can connect with how is this opening doors for the future?
Yeah, we were writing this in 2020, so
Oh
this
my.
was well before the the generative AI boom. I mean, we did have projects at the time like IBM Watson. We had projects like Salesforce Einstein. So it wasn't like we were writing this in the, in a vacuum, not thinking about artificial intelligence coming, but certainly we didn't have OpenAI Chat GPT. And what is interesting, of course, is OpenAI has got open in the name. But as soon as ChatGPT started taking off, all of a sudden they started getting more closed because that's a common phenomena that uh, businesses will use open source as long as it's to their advantage. But as soon as they get some advantage that they think they can exploit, then sometimes they get closed. And I think that, if we were to rewrite the paper today, we would probably explore some of those challenges of keeping ecosystems open once one of the dominant players gets ahead, and then they don't want things to be open because they've got revenue to protect. So that's something we see over and over in these open source communities and open innovation communities is open's good until it's not good, and then you start seeing all kinds of other dynamics starting to take over as well. So I think I don't know that Param and I have ideas for writing a follow-on chapter, but that first chapter I think would be of interest to your audience to take a look at because it did it was written just before the boom.
Oh. And maybe give the baseline of what will happen in the future, no? It's interesting what you're pointing out because we are also analyzing, well, by we, I mean me and my teams in my company and different circles nearby me, thinking about ecosystems and the evolution of ecosystems. They have these dynamics and maybe creating layers because once a business rolls out, maybe you have a part of an ecosystem that is already its own dynamic, and maybe something like closes up and goes beyond and stuff like that. So there's this interesting phenomena of creating like galaxies of ecosystems, as Carlis Baldwin put it in the last World Open Innovation Conference. So I think it's the rapid movement of these ecosystems might be interesting to study now in this ecosystem phenomena. Yeah.
Yeah, I
So,
think so. It's and the bigger picture is always more than a technical standard, right? The bigger picture is really um, how do we get the players to collaborate? And that's I think where um, again, if we envision digital twins, um, you know, getting a good collaboration means having a conversation, long conversations. The more similar um, entities are, the more likely it is to find a win-win collaboration. You could take entities that are very, very different, but still, from a digital twins perspective, if you had a long enough conversation between entities, they could probably find a win-win. Um, it's like that time, those times on the airplane, if you happen to sit beside somebody, they're a stranger at the start of the flight, but by the end of the flight, you know, you've got like 3 or 4 ideas that you've hatched on the flight together, and that's because you've had a long conversation. So I do think that we're, entering a realm of um, as the marginal cost of computing goes to zero, and we have um, digital twins of entities, exploring that collaboration space is going to get much easier to do. And so I think that's where I could imagine future papers built on the chapter that Param and I wrote, and hopefully he'll be able to join us in a future conversation so we can hear from Param. But yeah, that's where I think we might go in the future with this chapter.
This is a perfect gateway to this call to action, both to academics and practitioners. No, and maybe also I might point out that even within this book, we have these chapters about competition, about trust, about ethics with the good, the bad, and the open in open innovation, about value capturing, about IP. No, those are the ingredients that are taking form here in this discussion. And as you said, technology and all these new features to build ecosystems. And I do hope that in the near future, we can have this long conversation with you, of course, with Param, to talk about technology and where are we now today and comparing it to when you wrote the chapter. Jim, yeah. We are already in the final leg of our conversation. Any final thoughts, takeouts, anything you want the listeners to take with them?
No, if you want to see some presentations on this digital twin and stuff like that, just go to my SlideShare or connect with me on LinkedIn. And always, when you connect with me on LinkedIn, put a message so I know you're, a real person interested in like open innovation or digital twins. And I'm happy to, share things with people on this topic because it is still an exciting area for me to explore, and I'm always looking to find people that have perspectives on it. So that would be great.
We will take you to your word, and maybe it's us, maybe our digital twins.
There you go. Next time it can be a twin. Thank you, Mary.
Thank you very much, and see you all in our next chapter. Thank you. Bye.